The college football playoff continues to grow, but is it truly getting better for the players?
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Feel Good Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. During today's show, I will answer questions you have about the Ohio State football team, as well as some of Ryan Day's comments about playoff seeding. But first, the college football playoff continues to grow. But is it truly getting better for the players? And that question popped into my head when reading about some things Ryan Day said during a recent podcast interview when he was on the triple option with Urban Meyer. And Ryan Day was very open about some of the things that he loved, also some things that could improve. And Ryan Day has always been a player's coach, always trying to advocate for the players, always trying to make sure that the decision he makes the players better, not just on the field, but also off the field. And I think some of the things that Ryan Day discussed as far as ways that the CFP can improve the overall experience for the players, they're realistic, and they're things that I think the decision makers will take into account when making decisions about future playoff expansion and just how the playoff is ran. Ryan Day was open about some things. He discussed the hotels and how he would like for them to be moved away from big cities and to be more secluded and also explore alternative locations. We discussed how the players need to have the best food and how the conditions need to be top-notch. He also touched on how some playoff games are ran by committees, by bowl committees, but it's different than your traditional bowl game. And I think it was a Cotton Bowl this year where the players went down to Texas, and it wasn't the normal Cotton Bowl feel. It felt more like a traditional road game. Yeah, there was some more media responsibilities and things of that nature, but there weren't the events. There weren't the luncheons. There weren't the normal bowl game festivities that everyone expects. It was more, this is a playoff game, but it's ran by the bowl committee, but it's a national semifinal. And Ryan Day's thinking, why don't we just make this whole thing better? Now, maybe Ryan Day mentioned some things that are going to happen. Maybe there are things down the road that may change that he didn't mention. But overall, the overarching thing is make the overall experience better for the players. I mean, that's who's playing the game. They're the reason why we're watching the game, that we're in tune to Ohio State football, because of the high-level play that those players put out there on the field every time they're out there. So why not make the conditions the best for these players? Remember a few years ago, Urban Meyer was talking about some things. I think after the Alabama – it was either after the Bama win the 14th season in the playoff or after they won the title, talked about how there were players' families that couldn't afford to go to the Big Ten championship and then to go to a national semifinal away at that time, I believe, was in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, and then to go to the national championship that was in Dallas. So no matter where you are, Ohio State went from playing in Indianapolis, and then about a month later, they played in New Orleans. Then about a week and a half later, they played in Dallas. Think about this year. Ohio State had a home game December 20th, had a little bit of time off, had to go out to Pasadena, go back to Columbus, go down to Dallas, January 10th or 11th, somewhere around there, go back to Columbus, and then they had to go to the national championship, which was in Atlanta. Think about that travel for the players. Wouldn't it be a whole lot better? Now, this is something Ryan Day mentioned, but since we're expanding things, wouldn't it be a whole lot better if you're one of the top teams in the sport and you had opportunity to host two or three playoff games? I understand the bowl tie-ins, and I understand the desire of the decision makers out there in the Big Ten, the SEC, and all around these conferences to keep the bowls interested, to keep the bowl system going. But as we move more towards a true playoff, which is what we truly have now, why have so many neutral site games when the atmospheres would be 100 times better if those games were played on campus? It wouldn't shock me if down the road, coaches like Ryan Day and others were saying, move away from these bowl games. Schools will figure out how to host multiple playoff games in a given season. You have one neutral site game, which is your national championship, and make that the end all be all, make that the most special thing of all, to where, yeah, you got the Rose Bowl. And to me, the Rose Bowl is the best bowl game of them all. Like, I like the new Atlanta Stadium, the stadium in Georgia. I do love the Rose Bowl a whole lot more. The stadium, the atmosphere, the surrounding, the mountains. I mean, I love that way more. And I think the players may enjoy less travel too, but also the overall conditions need to be better. If Ryan Day is saying this now after winning the national championship, he's not just saying it because, well, we lost and I'm now disgruntled because of X, Y, and Z. No, he's saying it because somebody needs to advocate for these players. What was it, about 10 years ago now? After UConn won one of the national championships in college basketball, and there are players on UConn's team discussing the food that they were getting and how they didn't have enough money for this, and the food was this condition. Next thing you know, people start making changes. People made changes in the CFP after Urban Meyer made comments about, well, the financial status of I guess family and children, not financial status of the family. What you're asking these families to do is difficult. It's hard. I mean, the average person, the average family that has two working adults that are making a living, supporting the family, they don't have the financial means to go from Indianapolis in 2014 to going to New Orleans and then to travel to Dallas. They just don't have the financial means for that. What happened? The CFP, the College Football Playoff Committee, that body made changes and allowed there to be travel accommodations for people in some of the players' families. And it wouldn't shock me. And this is something that I've enjoyed about Ryan Day, thinking outside of the box. Ryan Day was open, even not talking about this, talking about, hey, maybe we move the day of the game, or we don't have that game be played the Saturday after Thanksgiving, or maybe we make it played in the month of November. Maybe it's the first Saturday in November, or maybe it's in October. But maybe we should explore changing things up, because as you're now saying, there's no divisions in the Big Ten. Do you truly want to play a physical, grueling game like that between the team up north the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and then a week after that game is played, the Big Ten championship? Probably not. Well, Ryan Day, I think, is going to be an advocate for the players. I think it would be a better move for the players. And normally when I think about coaches making a move for the players, sometimes things don't sit right with me, and I get a little disgruntled. I won't say disgruntled, a little confused by the logic that they are discussing and how they get to that conclusion. I do think with Ryan Day discussing these things that could be changed, I think he's on to something. And I'm with him when it comes to alternate locations, things that make things easier for the players. Some of that is hotel. Some of that's also just different locations for the playoff games to be played. I mean, think about it. The Super Bowl is played all around the country. Had a Super Bowl in Indianapolis, Indiana. They had a Super Bowl in New York a few years ago. Now, generally, they play in the same locations, the warm weather locations. You got Vegas, you got SoFi Stadium in Cali, you have Atlanta, you got Dallas. I mean, you have your Miami, you got your hotbeds, but you generally have your games played around in the South. If there are games played in the North, well, it's only been two. One was in New York, and that was an outdoor stadium. Then you had Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Big Ten Championship game is played. That's indoors. And I think as you get closer to more northern teams having indoor stadiums, I think the CFP is going to be more in tune to going outside of the box to have different stadiums host the national championship on a regular basis. You may still want to use your bowl games for the national semifinal. I think you can eliminate bowl games in the national quarterfinal, because I just don't think that's even needed at all. But I do think that we're getting closer to the CFP doing what they did after Urban Meyer made some comments, listening to the coach that won the national championship and making some changes that help the players and their family and improves the overall experience. Isn't that what this is for? We're watching a game for the players. Don't we want the players to have the best conditions leading into the game so they can play their best? Absolutely. And I love that Ryan Day was advocating for the players once again to better the overall experience for players in the college football playoff. Ryan Day also made some comments about CFP seating, and some of the things he said are also some of the things we said right here on this show. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, The NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you all for tapping Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. As Ryan Day was discussing the things that he wasn't pleased with the college football playoff, and with this being a new format, with there being 12 teams in it, and you're playing a first-round game, and you can control a lot of the things that you do in-house. The CFP committee still is going to control some of the operation leading into the game and then also on game day. But Ohio State can do a lot of the things. They can control a lot of that stuff. You move on to play in the Rose Bowl. You move on to play in the Cotton Bowl and then in the Natty. The CFP is controlling more and more and more while also working with the bowl committee. But it's not the true the bowl feel once you get there. I like that he's making these comments, and I enjoy Ryan Day also discussing his disapproval of the CFP seating. I'm going to read this word for word for you just to get more about Ryan Day's more thoughts about the seating and how, well, things could be a little bit different moving forward. Quote, I think it was clear this year that the automatic buys were a little out of whack. When you see kind of how it all shook out, I think they need to rethink that. I understand why in the first year it was done that way, but I think that if you win your conference, sure, you should get in. Then you get a bye. I think that's a little much, end quote. Does anybody here have a problem with Ryan Day making the comment saying it was a little out of whack? Or if you win your conference, things should be a little bit different? I don't think so. Not at all. And I think there are a lot of teams around the country, a lot of coaches around the country that are the same way. Why in the world should your seeding in the playoff and you getting an automatic qualifier to get a bye be determined by you winning your conference championship game? Conferences aren't equal across the board. This isn't a Power 4 thing or a G5 thing. Across the board, conferences aren't equal. If you want to go to the G5 level, there are higher there are tiers in that thing. You can rank them all 1 through whatever. You can rank them all in the power level 1 through whatever. Trust me, they're not the same. I mean, even in the Power 4 level, if you want to rank them, you may want to say the Big Ten's better. You may want to say the SEC's better. But you're going to come to a conclusion that those are the top 2 conferences in the sport. Then if you want to say, well, the Big 12 is better, the ACC is better, cool. You can debate that all you want to. But your conclusion is going to be those are the 3rd and 4th best conferences in the sport. Then you also have to realize Notre Dame's in this mix. They're not in the conference, but sometimes they might be the best out of any conference champion in the college football. So you kind of got to take that all into account. The fact that Notre Dame, I believe, was 11-1 in the regular season, didn't get a first-round bye because they're not in the conference, that's stupid. That's absolutely stupid. The fact that there was a G5 school that had an automatic qualifier because they were the highest-ranked conference champion in a group of 5 level, and they were automatically in, while Notre Dame was good enough, they didn't get an automatic qualifier in, that's stupid. That's absolutely stupid. Now, I don't agree with the new format of how the thing would be when it goes to 14 teams. I think in 2026, as the Big Ten and the SEC recently met on Wednesday to discuss the future seeding of the playoff and different changes that may come up, the Big Ten and the SEC have the power. It's crazy to say that. But they have the power to change things and the power to work together to do things that make them make more money and to get more teams automatically into this playoff. If you go to a 14-team format, I'm going to go through this once again, did it earlier this week, but I think on a Friday, especially on a day like today, we're talking about Ryan Day's comments, we need to revisit some of the things in regards to seeding moving forward. We're potentially looking for a 14-team playoff that looks like this. The Big Ten and the SEC automatically get 4 teams in. Now we're up to 8 teams. The ACC and the Big 12 automatically get 2 teams in. We're up to 12 teams. The highest ranked group of 5 team automatically gets in. Highest ranked group of 5 champion automatically gets in. Up to 13 teams. If Notre Dame is in the top 14 of the CFP rankings, that's the 14 team. So you got 4, 4, 2, 2, 1, 1. That one is Notre Dame. If they're in the top 14, it's an automatic qualifier. And if they're not, that's an at-large thing. I understand why the Big Ten and the SEC automatically want to get 4. I just don't think that's the right move at all. I don't like automatic qualifiers for even conference champions. In any given year, the champion of the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and Big 12, I had to go through that real quickly. They're going to get in. 9 times out of 10, they're one of the top 14 teams in the country, and they're going to get in. So when I think about moving forward, the seeding, I'm going to go back to what I said previously. I'm not going to try to change my tune just because of what Ryan Day said or because of this new format right in front of me. If you got 12 teams in the playoff, put the top 12 teams in the playoff and let that thing ride. I don't care conference affiliation. I don't care if it's P4 or G5. I don't care. Don't try to boost rankings in the regular season so a team at the end of the day automatically gets in because at the G5 level. No. Put the top 12 teams in the playoff and let that thing ride. And I think moving forward, that's what they should do. I don't know if it's going to happen. However, that's the path that the CFP committee needs to move on. Put the best teams in and just seed them. Conference champion or not, I don't care. We want to see the best teams in the sport compete for a national championship. There's no reason why a team that's not in the top 12 in the final ranking of the CFP gets in automatically because they won their conference championship game. That seems stupid. That's foolish. But that's what happened this past year, and I guarantee you that's going to happen more and more and more. When you allow conferences to run this sport and you allow 2 conferences to have the most power, this is what you're going to get. I am an advocate. I like Big Ten football. It's not my favorite brand of football to watch, but I like Big Ten football. I do understand why the Big Ten is trying to do this. I will just tell you, this shouldn't happen at all. Automatic qualifiers, remove them from every conference. G5, Notre Dame, Big Ten, don't matter. Just take them all away and put the best 12 teams or the best 14 teams or the best 16 teams and just let them ride. You want to have a play-in system on championship weekend? Cool. I think it's stupid. I absolutely think it's stupid. Let them regular season games mean so much that will decide who's automatically in if you want to go to the automatic qualifier route. The play-in games, yeah, it's a money grab. It's an absolute money grab. That stuff, to me, shouldn't even happen. NBA, if you're the 10th seed in the East or West, why in the world should you have a shot to be in the top 8 of teams in the playoff for that particular conference? You shouldn't. You didn't do it in the 82 games you played in the regular season. All of a sudden, you get lightning in a bottle and you get it and you win those play-in games to get into the NBA playoffs. That's dumb too. It is stupid. It is crazy that we're talking about this right now, but this is where we are. The powers that be in the sport, the 2 most powerful conferences, are working together to make more money and to get more of their own teams into the playoff. That makes sense why they're doing that. I just don't think that's the right move. Hats off to Ryan Day, man. Clap it up. Clap it up. You see right now, if you're watching on the YouTube or you listen to this, my microphone setup is a little bit different right now. Things are working a little weird with the cord that I use to record the show to hook up my microphone to the computer. And as odd as that is, and as odd as it might be looking at me right now with a non-traditional setup here for the YouTube, this right now at the CFP, it's odd. It's weird. It's a little wacky, and I hope they change it. The reality is, guys, they probably won't. One thing we will do moving forward, we're not going to change anything when it comes to your questions that you have submitted to Locked On Buckeyes. I'm going to answer the questions you have about your Ohio State football team next. Thank y'all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. Now, I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to answer the questions that were submitted. These are questions that were respond to a post that I put on the community tab on the Locked On Buckeyes YouTube channel. That's the place that the call for questions is going to come for the most part. We may branch out into other places on social media, but for right now, I'm going to put a post on the community tab. And if you have a question, that you want answered, put it right there, and we'll try to do this at least once a week to try to filter some of your questions you have about Ohio State leading into spring ball, leading into fall camp, and of course, the week one matchup against Texas. We're also going to go through these in the order they were submitted, so I'm not trying to go, this is my favorite question. No, if you put it in first, we're answering that one first. This question came from the J Mizzle 03 on YouTube. His question is, do you think there will be a little title hangover heading into spring ball? One, thank you for the question. And two, I don't, because I think these players are going to try to do everything they can to impress the new coaches. You got Tyler Bowen in there on the O-line, leading that unit. You got Matt Patricia coming in, leading the defense overall. I think those things are going to be great motivators for a lot of players to bring their best and to not allow the national championship win be something that allows them to get a little slumpish or sluggish. That's what I was looking for in practice. Also, it's not just those two coaches. You have Brian Hartline getting promoted, being the full OC. You have Keenan Bailey beating the co-OC. You have other coaches there that are getting promotions on both sides of the ball. And I think that's going to be the massive motivator for a lot of guys to not allow the national championship to allow them to be hung over once they get back on the football field. Another thing, a lot of these guys are competing for starting roles. Yeah, you got Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. You got some guys that are automatically going to do everything they can to keep their spot because they should. But also you got some guys, a James People, CJ Donaldson, you got a Max Clare, you got a Logan George, you have Julian Sayin, you have Lincoln Kienholz. You got a lot of guys that are trying to earn starting spots. And I think that's going to be another thing that's going to be a massive motivator for a lot of these players. If there were a time I think a hangover would come for Ohio State, maybe early in the year, week one against Texas, and maybe the first 4 or 5 games of the year, I don't think spring ball is a time that's going to happen because Ryan Day listens to the players. He understands how different the season was last year, and he's changing things up to make sure that these players are in the best shape they can be in spring ball and throughout the offseason heading into what should be a very successful year for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The next question comes from Rightful12597, and this individual submitted 2 questions. Julian Sayin has a lightning quick release. Is it possible that this offense can be even better in 2026 with a new coordinator? I know Kelly left, but it was Day's playbook mostly. I'm not really sure the coordinator being Brian Hartline is going to be the biggest reason why the offense could be even better. I like Chip Kelly and what he brought to the offense and the creativity with the run game. It is still Ryan Day's playbook. There were some things that were Chip Kelly wrinkles, but there were wrinkles to Ryan Day's playbook. Day is still here, and this basically Day's offense that Hartline is going to be calling. I do think, though, that there's going to be one thing in particular that's going to help Ohio State's offense be better in the fall, and it's going to be them being able to have a more balanced offensive attack. One thing that hurt Ohio State last year was a decision that Ryan Day made. Another one that hurt them were injuries. Ohio State's offensive line. They lost their left tackle, lost their backup left tackle. You start the year, even before you lose in Josh Simmons, you don't have Donovan Jackson for a couple of games. And all of a sudden, McLaughlin gets hurt. I may have missed some things along the way. You're rotating at guard in the playoffs, something we really had never seen at Ohio State, but it happened. And I don't think Ohio State is going to be in a scenario where they're going to have to rotate at guard, or they're going to be in a position to where they are going to have to fix some things with the run game because the backs can't figure it out. I don't think last year with the run game was a running back issue. I think the issue with the run game was the offensive line not being consistent for a 4-game stretch until the playoffs. And even then, that wasn't even the same thing because they had a different starting left guard at times because Luke Montgomery showed everybody he could start at guard. And so I do think for Ohio State that the offense will look different. It could be more balanced than it was in the regular season than it was a year ago, even in the postseason. Like, I still think Ohio State's run game in the postseason, it was let's throw this thing to open up the run, where in 2025 it could be let's run this thing to open up the pass, even though you have the best receiver in the country. You may have the best trio of receivers in the country between Jeremiah Smith, Tate, and Ennis. You may even want to throw Bryson Rodgers in there. If those guys go 4 wide, is there a better combination of receivers than that? If you want to put Max Clare in that and say top 4 receivers and tight end, the Buckeyes may have the best combination with that too. But I still think we're going to be able to see a better, more balanced offense. It's not because of the coordinator switch. It's because, well, guys are healthy. And healthy offensive line and more experienced offensive line going into the season is going to help Ohio State have a more balanced offense and truly a better offense in the fall. Last but not least, thank you, Rifle One, for submitting 2 questions. If Julian Sayin is what we expect, will he be our Heisman favorite instead of Smith? Then he at the end says, sorry, that's 2 questions. LOL. I told him afterwards in a comment, I don't care. Submit them. It's fine with me. I do think there is a scenario, which is probably the likely one, that Julian Sayin, if he is what we think he is probably the top vote getter for Ohio State to win the Heisman. Jeremiah Smith already having a full season under his belt, already being the more hyped guy coming in, being someone that's truly a generational talent. I think Jeremiah Smith's going to be right there too. The issue with that is what I mentioned earlier. You got Cardinal Tate. You got Brandon Ennis. You got Bryson Rogers. You have Max Clare. You got Will Kazmarek. You got Sam Williams-Dixon. You got Tobo Rogers. If Ohio State wants to go outside of the top 2 running backs to use some of those speedy guys in the RB room to go out and to catch balls, well, what are you going to find? You're going to find that Sayin has the weapons. I don't know it's going to be 2020 with a Devonta Smith, because I think a big reason why Devonta Smith won the Heisman is because Jalen Waddle got hurt. Your number 1 receiver got hurt. Your number 2 receiver goes off for 112, 115 catches in a year in what was a COVID year where the SEC had a different schedule. I think Alabama went 12-0. I know they won at least 10 games, 12 or 13-0 in that year. And I think it was the injury to Waddle that propelled Smith to have that year. And everyone looked at Smith different because Devonta Smith we're talking about, because of an injury to the number 1 receiver. Well, Jeremiah Smith's coming into the year as your number 1 receiver. There's no Mecca Buka still here. And so while Jeremiah Smith is still the guy, his running mates are good. He is the best receiver in the country. But his running mates could be number 1 receivers at other spots along the way. So I do think Julian Sayin would be, because he's getting everybody involved. He is the guy that's coming in, following Will Howard, who had a very efficient year when he was in Columbus, Ohio, to be the guy that takes the passing attack to the next level, a level that we hadn't seen since CJ Stroud. Because I do believe Sayin is who we think he is as a processor, with his release, being able to get the ball all around the yard to make all the throws. I think he would be the front runner, but I wouldn't be shocked if Caleb Downs is right there with him. Here's the thing, though. If the linebackers at Ohio State do what we think linebackers can do, Caleb Downs won't be there. However, let's just say the second linebacker isn't progressing at the rate that everybody believes he's going to, or that he should, and then Caleb Downs is making more tackles. Let's say he does go for 110 tackles, 4 picks, and such and such TFLs, 2 scoop and scores. There he's in the conversation. But I do think there's a scenario that when you think about Smith and Sayin would be the front runner if and only if he is what we think he is. Currently, he is what we think he could be in the future. That's the only if. Submit more questions. We'll probably do this every Friday. The more questions you submit, we will answer this more. And once again, this is a YouTube exclusive. Putting questions there. Subscribe to Locked On Buckeyes on the YouTube. We put questions out multiple times a week, and sometimes they're polls, sometimes there's submissions to get your own questions. Just try to get more feedback and to grow the Ohio State Buckeye community there on the Locked On Buckeyes YouTube channel. Thank y'all for tapping the Locked On Buckeyes and making this show a part of your day, making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football podcast with my guy Spencer McLaughlin, from NIL to the revenue sharing that schools are about to embark upon, to you name it, CFP expansion, whatever it is, Spencer McLaughlin has you covered. Every Monday through Friday, he has his own opinions. He brings in local experts to share theirs, and he is the guy to get all of the national opinions and takes in regards to the sport that we love, which is college football. Thank you all for tapping into the show, and you can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. We had an audience today. Some of you may have heard him a little bit. It's my son. He is 7 months old, and he's joining us for the show. He gave a little feedback. He liked some questions. If you heard him, I hope you did. And if not, great. He was a little bit of a silent participant of the show. I'm done rambling, y'all. It's a Feel Good Friday. We're up out of here. Buckeyes basketball is back on the court on Saturday. Looking forward to watching them play, and looking forward to getting back with you guys on another show right here on Locked On Buckeyes.